Namaskaram on this sacred night of Mahashivratri, when the cosmos itself is in a certain alignment, when the energies of existence are most available. We look not just at Shiva as a deity, but as the very basis of existence. Many people have asked, who are Shiva's parents? Where did he come from? Shiva is often seen as a deity, a god with a blue throat, a third eye, matted hair, sitting in meditation or dancing in ecstasy. But if we truly want to understand Shiva, we must look beyond these images and stories. In the yogic tradition, Shiva is not considered to be someone who was born at a particular time or place. He is not bound by history, nor is he a product of lineage. He is not the son of someone, nor does he belong to a family tree. He is beyond the cycle of birth and death, beyond the limitations of form and identity. He is referred to as Shambho, one who is auspicious yet formless, one who exists beyond the constructs of creation and dissolution. When we ask, who gave birth to Shiva, we are asking the wrong question. Such a question comes from a mind conditioned to see everything in terms of beginnings and ends. Our entire experience of life is shaped by birth and death, because that is how we perceive ourselves. We are born into a family, we have parents, we grow, we age, and one day we perish. From this perspective, it is natural to assume that everything must have a beginning, a point of origin. But Shiva is not a person who was born. He is not an entity that emerged from somewhere. He is that which was, that which is, and that which will always be. The word Shiva means that which is not. It does not refer to a being, it refers to a dimension beyond existence itself, before creation happened, before form took shape, before the galaxies, the stars, the planets, and even time itself came into existence. There was still something, a boundless, infinite emptiness, yet full of potential. This is Shiva. He is not a product of creation, rather he is the very basis of creation. Everything that exists has come from this vast nothingness. The yogic sciences recognize this, which is why Shiva is known as the Adi Yogi, the first yogi, the one who perceived the mechanics of existence in their entirety. In the modern world, we tend to think of everything in terms of logic and reason. But there are certain things that cannot be understood through intellect alone. If you try to grasp Shiva with your mind, you will only end up with stories and concepts, not with the experience of what he truly represents. Shiva is not something to believe in, he is something to realize. He is the very source of existence, yet he himself is without a source. He is often depicted as sitting in deep meditation, because meditation is the way to experience that which is beyond form and identity. If one is willing to look beyond physical reality, beyond the limitations of perception, then one can begin to experience the presence of Shiva, not as a person, but as a dimension of existence. Those who have transcended the normal boundaries of the mind and body have spoken of experiencing a state where they are neither here nor there, neither alive nor dead, neither beginning nor ending. This is the dimension of Shiva. It is not something that can be understood intellectually, but something that can be touched if one is willing to go beyond what is logical, what is tangible, and what is defined. The reason Shiva is called unborn is because he does not fit into the framework of creation. He is not a consequence of something else. Rather, everything else is a consequence of him. He is not someone's son, nor does he belong to any lineage. He is the root of all existence, the vast emptiness that holds everything within it. Human perception is shaped by dualities. Light and dark, birth and death, beginning and end. Everything we experience seems to have a starting point and an ending point, because that is the nature of the physical world. But when we speak of Shiva, we are not talking about someone who fits within the confines of birth and death. Shiva is not bound by time, nor is he confined by the rules that govern the material world. He is beyond the cycle of life and death, beyond the limitations of form and existence. If we try to understand him within the framework of cause and effect, we will misunderstand the very nature of his presence. For most beings, birth and death define their journey. A tree begins as a seed. A river starts as a spring. A human being is born from the union of two others. Everything we see around us comes from something else. Our minds are conditioned to see life in this manner. One thing leads to another. One life gives birth to another. It is difficult for most people to comprehend something that simply is without having come from somewhere. But Shiva is not a being who emerged at a certain point in time. He is not the result of a process. He does not belong to a timeline where there was a moment when he did not exist and then suddenly came into existence. In yogic tradition, Shiva is known as the eternal one, the timeless one. His presence is not something that can be traced to a beginning because he is the very basis of existence itself. To say he was born would mean he was created, but creation happens within existence and he is existence itself. He is the unchanging, the ever-present, the one who exists beyond time and space. Those who have touched deeper dimensions of life have spoken of a presence that is beyond all physical limitations, something that cannot be defined, something that simply is. This is the nature of Shiva. If we look at the fundamental nature of existence, we will see that everything that takes form eventually dissolves. Planets, stars, even galaxies are born, they evolve, and they eventually disintegrate. But space, the emptiness that holds everything, remains unchanged. The unmanifest, that which does not take form, is eternal. It is only within this infinite emptiness that all creation happens. This is why Shiva is often associated with vast nothingness. He is not confined to the process of birth and death. Rather, he is the source from which everything arises and into which everything dissolves. When we perceive life only through the physical, we tend to see things as individual entities, separate from one another. But if we go deeper, we realize that everything is interconnected and that nothing truly begins or ends. What we call life and death are just transitions in this larger process of existence. If one understands this, then the question of Shiva's birth becomes irrelevant. He is not a person who lived and died, not someone who came and went. He is that which has always been. The human mind seeks to define things in concrete terms, to label and categorize so that it can make sense of the world. But there are certain dimensions of existence that cannot be understood through logic or reasoning alone. If we try to grasp Shiva as a concept, we will only create more stories. But if we are willing to experience, to turn inward and look beyond the physical, then we can begin to sense something that is beyond form, beyond definition, beyond time, that which does not come from anywhere, that which does not go anywhere, that which simply is. This is Shiva. When people hear the word Shiva, they often think of a god sitting in meditation, covered in ash, with a serpent around his neck and the crescent moon adorning his head. Some see him as a fierce deity, the destroyer of evil, while others see him as the ultimate yogi, lost in deep stillness. But if we truly want to understand what Shiva represents, we must look beyond these images, beyond these stories, and beyond our limited perceptions of form. Shiva is not a person, not a being of flesh and blood. He is not a deity created by belief or imagination. In the yogic tradition, Shiva is known as that which is not. He is the boundless, the formless, the infinite emptiness that holds all existence within it. Most people see emptiness as nothingness, as absence. But emptiness is not absence. It is the very source of everything. If we look at the universe, what do we see? Countless galaxies, planets and stars, yet the vast majority of existence is empty space. The physical world that we see, the material things we touch, make up only a tiny fraction of what actually exists. Everything emerges from the vast nothingness, and when its time is over, it dissolves back into the same nothingness. That nothingness is what we call Shiva. He is not someone who came into being, he is the very basis of being itself. In modern science, we speak of black holes, vast regions of space where even light cannot escape. Scientists now say that everything in existence came from what they call the singularity, a point of infinite density, a state where there was no time, no space, no form. From this formless state, the entire universe. If we look deeper, this is exactly how the yogic sciences have described Shiva for thousands of years. He is not the created, he is the source of all creation. He is that infinite void from which everything arises and into which everything eventually returns. When we say Shiva is boundless nothingness, some may feel uncomfortable. People are conditioned to seek meaning in form, in structure, in identity. We want to define everything, label it, make it fit within our understanding. But the moment we define something, we limit it. The moment we give something a boundary, we make it finite. Shiva is not something to be grasped intellectually. He is to be experienced. He is not a god sitting somewhere in the clouds controlling the universe. He is the very fabric of existence itself. He is that vast intelligence that holds the cosmos together, yet remains untouched by it. In yogic traditions, it is said that if one sits in deep stillness and becomes absolutely empty, they will touch Shiva. This is not about worship or belief. It is about dissolving the boundaries of who we think we are and experiencing the infinite. Every aspect of creation, from the tiniest atom to the largest galaxy, exists within the framework of time and space. But Shiva exists beyond time and space. He is not the past, present, or future. He is the very foundation upon which time unfolds. If one can remain still enough, silent enough, one will begin to feel the presence of something beyond physical reality. It is not something one can see or touch, yet it is more real than anything else. It is not an idea, not a philosophy, but a living experience. This is the essence of Shiva, not a god to be prayed to, not a myth to be believed, but a dimension of existence that one can enter if they are willing to go beyond themselves. That which is not, yet is the source of all that is. This is Shiva. In the human mind, everything is categorized, structured, and placed within a framework of relationships. A child is born to parents. A tree grows from a seed. A river begins from a source. This is how we understand life, through origins, connections, and lineages. But when it comes to Shiva, the moment we try to fit him into this framework, we lose the essence of what he truly is. Shiva is not someone's son, nor is he part of a lineage. He is the very source from which all lineages arise. Yet he himself belongs to none. He is not bound by ancestry, nor is he a continuation of something that came before. He is the root, the foundation, the origin of all that exists, yet he himself has no origin. In yogic culture, Shiva is referred to as the Adiyogi, the first yogi, the one who perceived the mechanics of existence and shared it with others. But even calling him the first is misleading because it implies there was a time when he did not exist. Shiva is not a being that came into existence at a certain time. He is not a product of creation. He is the very source of creation itself. Just as the vast space holds the planets, stars, and galaxies within it without being affected by them, Shiva is the formless intelligence that holds everything in existence. He is not a link in the chain of existence. He is the chain itself, yet he remains untouched by it. If we look at existence, everything comes from something. The body we have comes from our parents, the food we eat comes from the earth, the breath we take comes from the air around us. But what about the source of all things? From where does existence itself arise? In the yogic sciences, it is said that there is a dimension beyond physicality, beyond time, beyond cause and effect. This dimension is not something that can be measured or defined, yet it is the very foundation upon which all else is built. This dimension is what we call Shiva, not as a person, not as a god, but as the fundamental fabric of existence. People often try to attribute a lineage to Shiva, attempting to place him within the framework of known history and mythology. They want to define him as the son of someone, the creation of someone, the follower of someone. But Shiva does not belong to any one tradition, any one belief system, or any one people. He is the one from whom all paths emerge, yet he himself walks no path. He is the one from whom all knowledge arises, yet he himself has no teacher. He is the origin of everything, yet he has no beginning. If one is willing to look beyond the limitations of physical reality, they will see that all separations we create between past and future, between here and there, between self and other, are illusions of the mind. The deeper one goes, the more they realize that existence is not made up of separate entities, but is a singular, vast intelligence expressing itself in infinite forms. Shiva is this intelligence, the source from which everything takes shape. Yet he himself remains beyond shape and form. In every culture, people have tried to define the beginning of creation, searching for an answer to where it all started. Some say it began with the divine act, others speak of a cosmic explosion. But the truth is that the beginning itself is beyond human perception. The source from which everything arises cannot be placed within the framework of time, because time itself is an expression of that source. Shiva is not a product of time. He is that from which time flows. He is the infinite emptiness that holds all possibilities yet remains untouched by what arises within it. Mahashivratri is not just a festival, not just a night of prayer and devotion. It is a night of immense possibility, a night when the very cosmos seems to open its doors to those who are willing. It is a night that offers a profound opportunity to experience the boundless nature of existence. For those who are merely looking at life through the lens of survival, Mahashivratri may seem like just another night. But for those who are seeking something beyond the physical, beyond the limitations of the body and mind, this is a gateway. Shiva is not worshipped as a god in the traditional sense. He is not someone sitting up in the clouds, granting wishes or punishing people. He is a dimension, an energy, a state of absolute stillness and absolute dynamic potential at the same time. On this night, when the planetary positions are aligned in a particular way, it creates a natural upsurge of energy in the human system. If one remains awake and aware, keeping their spine erect, they can experience a certain opening within themselves, a doorway to something far beyond their usual perception. In yogic culture, this night is considered to be of immense spiritual significance because of the way it aligns the human system with the greater cosmic geometry. The energies of the earth and the human system function in such a way that if one makes themselves available, they can experience an effortless expansion of consciousness. This is why the ancient yogis and sages saw Mahashivratri not as a day of ritual, but as a night of transcendence. It is a night to dissolve boundaries, to experience a reality beyond the limitations of body and mind. For those who are only seeking material well-being, this night is celebrated in devotion, prayer, and external rituals. For those who are seeking self-transformation, it is a night to turn inward, to become receptive to the larger intelligence that governs life. And for those who are truly willing, it is a night to dissolve completely, to merge with the vastness of existence itself. Many people spend their lives looking outward, seeking fulfillment in relationships, in achievements, in possessions. But Mahashivratri is a reminder that everything one is searching for is not out there, it is within. Shiva is not an external entity. He is the vast stillness within every being. On this night, if one can become still, if one can remain awake in awareness rather than activity, they may touch this dimension within themselves. The significance of staying awake on Mahashivratri is not just symbolic, it is a science. When the natural energy flow in the body is moving upward, if one remains awake and aware, they can make use of this moment to elevate themselves to a higher state of perception. This is not a matter of belief or religion. This is a matter of direct experience. If one sits in meditative stillness, they will notice that there is a certain intelligence at work, something far greater than the limited identity they have created for themselves. In many traditions, people fast on this night, not because it is a ritual, but because when the body is light, it is more receptive. The idea is not to suffer hunger, but to ensure that the body is in a state where it does not become an obstacle to one's awareness. Every aspect of this night is designed to bring a person into alignment with the larger cosmic intelligence. It is a night of immense possibility, a night where one can break free from the compulsions of the physical and touch the infinite. For those who approach Mahashivratri with openness, it is not a night of worship. It is a night of transformation. It is not about seeking blessings. It is about breaking limitations. It is not about praying to a divine force. It is about realizing that the divine is not something separate from oneself. Shiva is often described as the destroyer, but this is not destruction in the way the human mind understands it. When people think of destruction, they think of something being broken, lost, or taken away. But Shiva's destruction is not about ruin. It is about transformation. It is about dissolving the old so that something new can emerge. It is about breaking the limitations that keep one bound, about shattering the walls of ignorance so that one can experience the boundless. Everything that exists is constantly changing, constantly moving from one form to another. A seed must break for a tree to grow. A river must carve its path through stone to reach the ocean. A human being must let go of old ways of thinking to evolve into something greater. Shiva represents this force of transformation, the dissolution of what is false, what is limiting, what is unnecessary. Without this process of destruction, there can be no new creation. Without the ability to let go, there can be no growth. In yogic traditions, Shiva is not seen as a being separate from creation. He is both the destroyer and the creator, the one who dissolves and the one who brings forth. This is not about good and evil, right and wrong. It is about the fundamental nature of existence. Everything that takes form must eventually dissolve. Every identity, every attachment, every belief system that one holds onto is temporary. If one understands this, they will not fear destruction. They will embrace it as a process of renewal. For those who are unwilling to change, Shiva can seem terrifying. He is depicted as the one who dances the Tandava, the dance of destruction. But this is not destruction for the sake of chaos. It is destruction for the sake of liberation. He does not break what is whole. He only breaks what is false. He does not take away life. He removes the illusions that keep people from truly living. If one is willing, if one is open, Shiva's destruction is not suffering, it is freedom. The human mind is conditioned to cling to what is familiar, to hold on to ideas, identities, and ways of being that provide a sense of security. But true growth does not happen in comfort. True transformation does not happen by holding on. It happens by letting go. If one wants to know Shiva, they must be willing to let go of all that they believe themselves to be. They must be willing to dissolve their boundaries, their limitations, their very sense of separateness. Only then can they experience what is beyond the mind, beyond the physical, beyond the limitations of form. Those who have truly sought transformation have always invoked Shiva, not because he is a god who grants wishes, but because he represents the possibility of breaking free from everything that keeps one limited. He is the force that dismantles what is false so that truth can shine through. He is the stillness that exists beyond all movement, yet he is also the force that moves all things. He is the silence that exists beyond all sound, yet he is also the vibration that brings existence into being. If one is only looking for comfort, for security, for something to hold on to, they will resist Shiva. But if one is truly seeking to break free, to go beyond, then they will see him not as a destroyer, but as the ultimate liberator. He does not bind, he breaks all bonds. He does not create walls. He removes all barriers. He does not give one an identity. He takes away all identities so that one can experience what lies beyond. This is not destruction in the way the mind understands it. This is the most profound transformation, the most complete freedom. When people think of intelligence, they think of the mind, of thoughts, ideas, logic, and reasoning. They believe intelligence is about collecting information, analyzing, and coming to conclusions. But the yogic sciences have always spoken of a different kind of intelligence, one that does not come from thought, one that does not arise from the intellect. It is an intelligence that is beyond the limitations of memory, beyond analysis, beyond the grasp of logic. This intelligence is not something one acquires, it is something one taps into. It is not something that is created within the brain, it is the very fabric of existence itself. Shiva is often referred to as the embodiment of this intelligence, not as a thinking mind, not as a knowledgeable being, but as the pure, unbounded consciousness that pervades everything. He has studied everything, but because he is the very source from which all knowledge arises, the entire cosmos is an intricate web of intelligence. Everything functions with absolute precision, from the movement of galaxies to the way a single blade of grass unfolds. The human body, with its trillions of cells, all working in perfect harmony without any conscious effort, is an expression of this intelligence. The way a seed knows how to grow into a tree, the way the earth revolves around the sun, the way life continuously renews itself, these are not random occurrences. They are expressions of a profound intelligence that does not come from thinking, that does not arise from accumulated knowledge. This is what Shiva represents, not intellectual brilliance, but the very intelligence that makes existence possible. In yogic tradition, Shiva is described as the one who knows without learning, the one who perceives without processing. This is not about being all-knowing in the way people imagine gods to be. It is about being in absolute resonance with existence, about becoming so still, so open, that there is no barrier between oneself and the larger intelligence that governs everything. If one is willing to dissolve the boundaries of the individual mind, they will find that they do not need to think in order to know. They do not need to analyze in order to understand. They simply need to become receptive, and everything that needs to be known will be known. When one looks at Shiva as a yogi, sitting in deep stillness, eyes closed, unmoving, they may wonder, how can someone who is not doing anything be the most intelligent? But this is precisely the key. True intelligence is not about activity, it is about absolute stillness. The more one becomes involved with the chatter of the mind, the more disconnected they become from the fundamental intelligence that exists within everything. The moment one goes beyond thought, beyond memory, beyond the compulsion to categorize and define, they touch a dimension of intelligence that is infinite. Most people live within the limitations of what they have learned, what they have experienced, what they remember. Their understanding is confined to what they have gathered from the outside world. But if one can drop this need to hold on to accumulated knowledge, if they can become utterly still within themselves, they will begin to perceive directly, without the need for words, without the need for theories or explanations. This is why Shiva is seen as the ultimate source of wisdom, not because the mind seeks to grasp, to define, to organize. But true intelligence does not function in this way. It does not need definitions, it does not need theories, it simply knows. This is not a knowledge that can be written down in books, not something that can be transferred from one person to another. It is only something that can be experienced if one is willing to go beyond the compulsions of thought, beyond the limitations of memory, beyond the distractions of the mind. They will find that intelligence is not something they need to seek, it is something they already are. The only thing standing in the way is their own identification with the limited intellect. The human experience is largely shaped by identity. People define themselves by their name, their family, their nationality, their profession, their beliefs, and their past experiences. Everything they do, every thought they have, every emotion they feel is filtered through this identity. They are constantly reinforcing the idea of who they are, drawing boundaries between themselves and everything else. This sense of self, though necessary for navigating the world, also becomes a prison. It limits perception, creates suffering, and keeps one bound to the compulsions of the mind and body. But the essence of spirituality is to break these boundaries, to dissolve this rigid sense of self, to experience life in its totality rather than through the narrow lens of identity. This is what Shiva represents: the ultimate dissolution, the breaking of all barriers, the annihilation of everything that one believes themselves to be. Shiva is not a being with a fixed identity. He is not bound by time, by space, by history, or by lineage. He is often depicted as a yogi who is completely beyond societal norms, beyond conventions, beyond definitions. He is everything yet nothing. He is the beginning yet he has no beginning. He is the end yet he does not end. He is the vast unbounded emptiness that contains all possibilities, yet he himself is beyond all that takes form. He is the ultimate dissolution, where all identities are dropped, all limitations are removed, all separations are erased. For one who is willing to let go of their rigid identity, Shiva is not a god to be worshipped, but an immense possibility to be experienced. The more one holds on to their identity, the more suffering they create for themselves. The very nature of identity is limitation. It is a boundary that defines what one is and what one is not. But in defining what one is, they automatically create a barrier between themselves and everything else. This is why people feel isolated, separate, disconnected. The stronger the sense of self, the stronger the sense of otherness. But when one breaks this illusion, when they dissolve this false sense of separation, they experience the oneness of existence. They no longer see themselves as an individual entity, but as a part of everything. This is not an idea, not a belief. belief but a direct experience that transforms the very way one exists. The process of dissolving identity is not about losing oneself in the way people fear. It is not about becoming nothing in the sense of emptiness or loss. It is about becoming everything. When one is no longer confined by a limited sense of self, they expand beyond the boundaries of the body, beyond the compulsions of the mind, beyond the limitations of experience. They do not disappear, they become infinite. This is why Shiva is known as the destroyer, not because he destroys life, but because he destroys the illusions that keep one bound. He is the destroyer of ignorance, of falsehood, of all that is unnecessary. He is the force that dissolves the ego so that one can experience existence in its true boundless nature. If one looks at life deeply, they will see that all suffering comes from identity. The fear of loss, the fear of death, the pain of separation, all of it arises because people cling to the idea of who they are. They hold on to their name, their memories, their roles, believing that without them they would cease to exist. But what they do not realize is that the moment they let go of these false identities, they do not become less, they become limitless. The moment they dissolve these boundaries, they do not lose themselves. They gain everything. This is not a philosophy, not a theory, but a fundamental truth of existence. The idea of dissolving identity may seem terrifying, but in reality, it is the greatest liberation. It is the key to absolute freedom, absolute peace, absolute joy. This is why Shiva is seen as the ultimate yogi, not because he has attained something, but because he has dropped everything. He is not defined by anything, not limited by anything, not bound by anything. He is not this or that. He simply is. If one is willing, if one is open, they too can touch this dimension. They too can experience life beyond identity, beyond limitations, beyond separation. Shiva is not an entity to be worshipped, not a deity to be prayed to. He is a possibility, a doorway to the boundless. He is not someone sitting in the heavens, granting or denying wishes. He is the very fabric of existence, the intelligence that moves all things, the stillness that holds everything together. He is the destroyer, not of life, but of ignorance, of illusion, of all that limits a human being from realizing their ultimate nature. He is the source of transformation, the force that dissolves false identities, the one who shatters every boundary so that what is infinite may be known. On this sacred night of Mahashivratri, the universe aligns in a way that creates an opening, an opportunity for those who seek something beyond the physical, beyond the limitations of the mind. It is not a night of mere ritual, not a night of devotion alone. It is a night of transcendence. If one is willing, if one remains awake, aware, and receptive, they may touch that dimension of existence which Shiva embodies. This is not a matter of belief, not something that requires faith or worship. It is a science, an experience, a direct realization of the nature of who and what one truly is. The very structure of life is designed for one to move beyond the compulsions of the body, beyond the distractions of the mind, beyond the boundaries of identity. But it is only for those who are willing to let go, to dissolve, to break free. Shiva does not belong to any religion, any tradition, any philosophy. He belongs to those who are seeking, those who refuse to settle for the surface of life, those who are willing to dismantle the illusions that keep them bound. He is not separate from anyone. He is within everyone. It is just a question of whether one is willing to turn inward, to become still, to become empty, so that the infinite may fill them. For those who are willing, Mahashivratri is not just a festival, it is an opportunity. It is not just a celebration, it is a possibility. It is not just a night, it is a doorway.